Okay. So I've just logged on to Canvas, right? Of course, you guys hopefully pretty familiar with this by now. But I want to go to assignments and just show you what I have started to do so you know kind of the organizational system of where we're headed. Don't worry about these just yet. They may or may not be deleted, but our project number 1 is we're just gonna call it the residence because it's a home. But essentially I've broken this down into 2 parts. I've broken it down into an information assignment. So this is not really an assignment that has anything due, but this is where I will post files that you need for the subsequent actual due assignments, okay? So right now there's not a whole lot in there, but if I open it up, you know, here's floor plan 01, right? That's, or yeah, a PO1 file, floor plan number 1 file. And so this will be the file that we're going to be, it's an AutoCAD file, obviously, but we're going to be working with this file today. And you will be working with it to generate your residential project we'll be working on, okay? Yep.
Can you publish it?
Yes, I will publish it. I haven't published it just yet because I didn't want everybody going in there and looking just yet. Let's do it. Okay. Second thing here, we've got the residence, project number 1, the residence, starting your file. So that is an actual assignment. So this first one, not an assignment, just an informational place to put things, okay? And I will update this through the semester, you know, as you need information. So if we need a second floor plan, if we need an elevation, if we need, you know, whatever we need, I will put in there with regard to this project, okay? And I will follow suit with that for other projects. We're going to have this residential project, and we're also going to have a commercial project. Okay, so project number 2 will be a small commercial project. And I'll do the same thing. I'll create an informational assignment for you to go and find information, and then the actual assignments themselves. All right. So let me go over the assignment first before we get going, so you kind of know what you are looking at before we get going. Really what we're going to start doing today is you're going to start working in your Revit files. We probably have one more class period before you can do a whole lot, but you can get started working in Revit. So for this assignment, and I want you to notice, there is text that is dark, and then there is text at the bottom that is grayed out. For this assignment, you're just going to be doing to part number 3. So when it starts to be really gray like this, don't worry about doing those just yet. And I've noted that here. You will only be completing part 1 through 3. Do not complete the grayed out items, okay? But what you're going to be doing is you're going to be starting your file for this project, the residence. You're going to create a new file. You're going to give it a name. You're going to save it. You are going to designate 3 backups for it to be running. You're going to I think this is just good practice. Wherever you are working on your computer, right, save it in the same spot, right? Just kind of good file management. Make your file and then continue to save it in the same spot, okay? Create the most basic levels for this house, which we'll talk about today. You're going to create a main level, a basement level, a top of wall, and a roof level. And then part 3, you're going to link in a CAD file, right? So kind of how we start a Revit file, we open it, we save it, and then we start bringing in the vertical elements and linking in a template to trace over. Okay, it's kind of a, you know, you may not always have something to trace over, but it's a pretty good workflow, right? For those of you that maybe want to work in AutoCAD, generate a quick floor plan, and then, you know, maybe have somebody else generate it in Revit for you. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing today, and I will, while I'm at it here, publish this one. Okay, there we go. Okay, but this will be the general workflow. So if you're ever thinking, she said there was a CAD file somewhere, or I don't know what level 2 looks like, go and look for that information assignment. All right. Today I'm just going to open up Revit, and we're going to be working with kind of a blank file. This is also kind of a good reminder of how to start your assignment. All right. Does anybody have any questions on the modification commands we talked about last week? Or do they seem pretty okay for everyone? Okay.
I did terrible with move.
You did terrible with move? What was the problem with move? It just didn't work? Okay. Okay, let's take a look at it. We can look at move. All right. Hopefully I have downloaded that same file and it's right there. Okay. This is that file we were using last week to work on modification commands. So we'll just look at move. If anybody else had any other troubles, we'll go over those, right? This is what our file looked like. And it looks like this because I wanted you to think about, you know, visually sometimes you have to change some settings even before you get going. Okay, in this case, the text is gigantic, my tags are gigantic. So I'm going to come down here and change my scale because I know that's kind of an indication of what's happening. We'll change it to an 1/8 inch and see what happens. Looks pretty good. I can see my tags. They're pretty good scale size, right? I can see my text. I can't see my whole drawing. Again, we'll just remind you, we have a crop region in Revit, show crop. I clicked on that and my crop region shows. So I do know there are some things hiding. I'm going to drag that over, drag that up, right? And I can see my whole screen now. I could leave this crop region on in case I need to modify it again, or I could, you know, visually just turn it back off by clicking on hide, right? Whatever way I want to accomplish that, I can. Morning. Okay, so moving. How do we go about moving things? Let's see, where is our move? One thing, and this is something you want to get used to, especially if you're using AutoCAD all the time, right? You get into the habit in AutoCAD. It doesn't really matter how you initiate your command, right? You can select first, hit the command and execute, or you can hit the command and then select and then execute, right? So there's really no difference between the two. You can do that in Revit as well, but I think by and far, the easiest way to go about these commands is to select first and then execute, okay? So for me, I will select something, right? I will come up here to move, or you can type MV, click. Okay, that establishes that that object will move now. The move command has been initiated. Okay, I click to establish a base point just like I would in AutoCAD. I move in the direction I want to go and I type a dimension. 10 foot, enter. Okay, now let me undo that, Control Z. I'm gonna grab this. If you're having trouble controlling it, like it won't move up and down, right, but it'll move side to side, or you're having trouble selecting, we can talk about that as well. I grab my object, I click on move. You're gonna notice we have a couple of options up here, right? And we have constrain, disjoin, and multiple. So if constrain is turned on and I click my base point and I move in the direction I want to go, well, this one's not constraining very well, but it always constrains when you don't want it to. But constrain means that it's almost like an ortho type constraint where it'll only move in one direction. You know, either horizontally and won't go vertically, or it'll go vertically and won't move horizontally. Okay, so if you go to move something and you're thinking, gosh, it won't move up, it's likely because constrain is checked by default and you just uncheck it. Okay. You can also disjoin objects. So sometimes you can have another type of constraint with another object, or maybe this object is connected to something and you want it to disjoin and then move, right? You want it to disconnect and then move from that object. You can check disjoin. Okay, so those might be some things that are causing trouble, right? So I move in the direction I want to go and I could type something like 5, enter, and it moves over 5 feet. All right. Now, one other thing that comes into play with moving in Revit is that it doesn't always move from the same point on objects, right? So for example, when I click on this object, you notice that I have my grip in the middle of the wall, and if it's selected, I can see wall center line is chosen, right? That's how that object is essentially defined. So if I'm moving things, or if really doing different modification commands, that's going to move from the center line, right? So if I want to change that, I can click down. I was having this trouble before, wasn't I? Where I couldn't. I need to talk to Jameson about this. You guys can see it on your screens though. So I can click down and choose, you know, finish face interior, finish face exterior, and I can get it to move one direction or the other. Okay. Another thing you'll want to, you know, kind of do all the time, which is what we do in AutoCAD as well. You know, you can measure things to make sure that you've gotten them the correct distance from one another. So if I move something and I think, well, I hope it went 5 feet or 5'6" or whatever, right? You can always come down to the Modify tab here. You can click on Measure Between 2 Points. Click, click, and, you know, just make sure that that dimension is what you want it to be. And if it's not, we can revise it. And you can click on, what did I click on? I clicked on something I didn't want to click on. Okay, I can click on one of my walls, right? I get that dimension and I could change it, 22 feet. So it's an even increment, right? You're probably, again, used to, in AutoCAD, you move it once and it's great. It's where you want it to be, right? In Revit, I'll honestly say that very few times do I get things in the right spot the first time. I usually kind of place it, I have to move it, I have to measure it, and then adjust it, honestly, which seems a little, you know, not productive, but it's kind of how it works.
So with that function, when you change the measurement, you have to select which one you would actually like to move.
Right. Yeah.
Way to split the difference.
Well, there is, but we're not there yet.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you're thinking, well, I want them equally, you know, you'll have to use probably a dimension to get that equal, which we'll talk about soon. Doesn't sound logical, but it makes sense when you see it happen. But in this instance, if I select this object and then I type, you know, 30 feet, it's going to move that object over and that one will stay stationary. Yeah. Does that help? Hopefully, maybe. And 2, sometimes it just takes practice, right? You just have to do it a few times and then you'll get it. Okay. You what? I know, trust me, I feel you. After using AutoCAD for all those years, there's some learning curves here, right? Feet being the main one for me was remembering that feet was the default unit, right? I would type in 30 and it would go off 30 feet and I'm thinking, I meant 30 inches, you know? But do remember that we have 2 types of selection windows, right? Select first, we have kind of the, if you want to use AutoCAD terms, the blue selection window, right? Where it only selects items that are enclosed entirely in that selection. And then we also have the green selection window, right? Which will select items that you touch, okay? Okay, any other problems on any of the modification commands or not too bad? All right. Well, let's talk about levels then, all right? And I want to talk about levels, and I want to use a blank AutoCAD or Revit file to do that, so that when you do your assignment and you have to create some levels, that you know how to do that, okay? Let me close this. One important thing to remember about Revit is that we have a 3D element we always have to worry about, right? Regardless of whether or not we're just drawing a floor plan, we always have that 3D element that we have to worry about, because at the same time we're drawing a floor plan, we're also creating a 3D model, okay? So if I were to start a brand new drawing in Revit, I would click on New, and you should have some, oh shoot, no, we don't have any. This is a product of me not having a T drive. Let me just see if I have a T drive yet. I do not. So one problem with me not having my T drive yet is I wasn't able to copy those files that you guys copied over, which contains all the templates. So we don't have a template. What will happen when you, what will happen when you come to this screen on your computer is that it will say, would you like, you know, you'll say new, and it will say architectural template, construction templates, right? And so you'll choose one of those. And I would say that you'll probably want to use the architectural template. Is yours working there, Brian? Do you see that? Okay, so when you drop down and you say new, it has architectural and, okay.
Yeah, it pops up with construction. I went to the drop down and picked architectural.
Perfect. Okay, so that's what you'll want to do when you start your project. Okay, and when you do that, you will get some things in there that are kind of a basic tool palette of things that are used in an architectural project, right? There are going to be a few wall types. There might be a level or two created, some different things like that. I'm a little concerned because I don't think I'll have any of that, not having a template file. Hold on, let me see if Jameson can help me real quick. Yeah, mine kind of decides to come and go. We're being recorded.
Oh, by the way, Alec, it worked. My wife totally made zucchini bread. Yep,
That's funny. I was like, I don't know if that'll.
it worked. Okay, where is it? Wait, I'm being recorded?
You are, and your screen's being captured, so
Oh, great.
be good. And everybody can see what you're doing, so. I'm gonna go, Allie, while Jameson is doing this, I'm gonna go get your mouse from the office.
Alright, thank you.
Oh, awesome.
There you go. One thing off my to-do list.
I made it worse.
You made it worse?
Yep.
Oh. Well,
You're gonna have an awesome video.
huh. My T-drive never works. I don't get why.
That's not where I wanted either. I'm really messing this up. It's the mic. It makes you nervous. Sorry to everyone watching the video later.
No? Should I just maybe bypass it and use a different file? You want to figure it out later?
It totally didn't do it.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
All right, that's okay. I have a backup plan, right? The most common words in architecture. I have a backup plan. It's true. All right, so I'm going to do this. So on yours, when you do File and you click on New, you'll get this. And when you use the drop down, it will say Architectural, Construction. You'll have a bunch of different options. Okay, choose Architectural. Also, in your kind of splash page here, they'll be listed here, right? So you'll see Architectural, Construction, etc. I'm just going to open this one and delete out everything, and we'll go from there. Okay. So as I was saying, you're going to have to worry about 3D now because Revit is a BIM software, and at the same time you are drafting floor plans. Elevations are being generated, sections are being generated, a lot of good stuff is being generated. Okay, open that up just a little bit more. So how do we handle that 3D element? Okay, and the way that we do handle it is with levels. All right, so levels, they allow you to define the vertical height limits within your project. Okay. One thing I want to sort of say now, and this will apply to a lot of different things in our Revit software, our BIM software, is that sometimes certain things like levels are only available to be seen in certain views. Okay, so when I'm in a floor plan view, I can't see my levels. I can't really differentiate, you know, how tall things are. If I go to, let me close ceiling plan. If I go to an elevation, let me go to my north elevation. Click, click. There are my levels. This is what a level is, all right? It has a little data marker. It has a name. It tells me, you know, 0 foot, 0 inches, all right? Here's level number 2. It gives me the name of the level, and it tells me how much above level 1 level 2 is. Okay, so between level 1 and level 2, I have 10 feet. All right. Now, sorry, I just lost my train of thought there. What's that?
Did the homework say 9?
I can't hear what you say.
Didn't the homework say 9 feet?
9 feet. Yep. Yes. So this one is the default template. So they just put a couple in there so that you can see them in elevation view, right? Our homework is going to define this level 2 as 9 foot, and we're going to have a roof level, and we're going to have a basement level as well, all right? But by default, Revit will put these in here so you can see them. I just want to make the point that these are, you're not available to see these in every single view, right? So if you're in your floor plan view, I come over here to my project browser, click, click, they're not there, right? So we have to access them in a view that shows verticality. So elevations or sections or details that have a vertical nature, okay? So north elevation, click, click, there are my levels, all right? When I click on one of these levels, there are a few things that we're visually going to see. So this first kind of description of these is going to be visual one. All right, I have a little kind of bubble at the end when I select it. On the end that doesn't have a marker, see this has a marker. On this side, I have a little box, okay? If I click on that box, it says show bubble, I can get a marker at this end. If I unclick that, it goes away. Okay, these are visual in nature. It doesn't redefine anything by visually showing this or turning it off, all right? It just allows you to organize your sheets to make them look the way they should. If I grab this little bubble and I hold my mouse down and I move it one way or the other, okay, it shortens that annotation, the dashed line. I'm going to zoom out and move my mouse over. See how I can grab this and drag it and let go and make it a lot shorter, right? We can do that so that if you know whatever we're drawing doesn't extend all the way over here, we have a way to shorten that annotation piece to sort of match how big the object we are annotating. And I'm using the word annotation because levels, they control the heights of things, but they're also considered a piece of annotation, right? They're describing objects in my view, right? It's not a building element like a wall or a window or a door. It's a piece of annotation. It's describing something in my view, okay? All right, so if I click on it, I can click this and I can show a bubble on that end. I can click on that once, click, click, and it can turn on and off, okay? You'll notice I have a little lock here, right? And you're probably wondering, well, what's that little lock for? I think Jameson realizes like how loud it gets in here when he talks. He's probably in a lot of the videos, right? Just from his office. What that little lock does is it constrains this other, well, not just this one, but other level markers in your view to move when you move, for example, this one, right? If I click on this one, I can drag it and it lines up with that, right? This is kind of an effort that Revit has to allow you to have your annotation all line up, right? These are things that, you know, professionals look for. So we want our annotation to all line up on one side if possible, be nice and neat, right? We want our annotation on this side to line up and look nice and neat. Depending on the view, usually it's okay to have the bubble on one side or the other, just be consistent, right? But this is one of those things that AutoCAD doesn't have, and I miss it when I'm in AutoCAD. It's very manual in AutoCAD. If I unclick this little lock, then I am allowed to drag that out without that one below it dragging out, okay? I'm gonna hit Control Z and I'm gonna undo that, all right? So by default, our levels have a dashed line right here that, you know, designates kind of where the level is. We have the name, we have the level, and we have this little datum marker here, all right? Okay, so how do we define the height of these levels, right? And then second, how do we create new ones, okay? Third, how do we rename them to what we want them to be called? And what ramifications does that have, okay? I'm going to say this is a pretty blanket statement, but by far and away, I have two loves in Revit. the next one we haven't gotten to yet. This is one of my favorite features in Revit are the levels. And I say that because if any of you have ever worked on a professional project and you've had to keep track of data markers and heights in AutoCAD, it's a pain in the neck, right? They never get updated. You never know where the marker is measuring off of. They very consistently are wrong, which is a big deal. So this makes it kind of just super easy to track how high things are and how you're measuring things. I mean, it's seamless. It's just so easy. So I love this aspect of it. And it makes your drawings that much better because you always have, you know, a correct datum on things. Top of wall, top of main level, top of slab in the basement, the parapet, the stairs, everything has correct measurements according to one another, okay? All right, so let's talk about how we change these heights. All right, when you open your Revit file, you're going to have two levels. They are in the template, okay? If I want to change how far apart these two things are, I can click on one of them, okay? And I can come over here and I can click on the height, 10 foot, click, and it becomes editable. And I could type in something like 15 foot, enter. I didn't get any oohs and ahs. Ooh, right? This is one of those things where it's just like, wow, that's amazing. And then when we integrate architecture into this and we have actual drawings in here, right? When I move a level, my architectural elements are defined by those levels, which we'll probably learn next time. So if I've defined my main level walls to go from level 1 to level 2, and I change the height of level 2, magically all my walls follow level 2, right? So, you know, the system works. I can come over here and I have a temporary dimension here because this is selected. I could click on my temporary dimension, click, 21 feet, enter. And zoom back out a little and take a look at it. Okay. All right. So it's pretty easy to change these, right? If I wanted to change level 1 from 0 to 2 feet, I would click on it, click it again, 2 foot, enter, and it would move up 2 feet. All right. Now, I've said that it's pretty magical that when I have architecture in here like walls and I've defined my walls to go from level 1 to level 2, right? It's great when you move things. It can also be completely catastrophic when people get into a Revit model and they don't know what they're doing and they start changing data markers, right? Because it just throws everything off and you start getting errors and the building doesn't look right, and right? So while it's kind of one of the best things about Revit, it can also be one of the most, you know, easily messed up things in Revit as well, okay? And I mean, this happens all the time. You get somebody who's new in there, or you accidentally select level and you move it and then everything is thrown off, right? Things start on hosting and they don't look right and floors disappear and, you know, it's just a big gigantic mess. Okay, so I'm going to change level 1 back to 0. I'm going to click on it again, 0, enter. Okay. If I want to change the name of one of my levels, so for example, if I want level 1 to be called main level, I click on the text. But before I do that, I want you to notice something. Everybody panics. Wait, I already clicked on it. Gotcha. I click on it. I want you to notice that level 1 here corresponds with level 1 over here, right? I can see under my floor plans, there's level 1. And here is the data marker that represents that, right? I guess too, I want to make you start realizing that this object, right, it means something other than it's just a data marker. It's a level, right? So level 1 corresponds to level 1 here, which, you know, we know so far is a floor plan. So when I create a level, it creates a floor plan, okay, generally speaking. What that also means is that any changes you make to this, right, will also affect this over here, right? So if I create my level 1 floor plan and then I decide to move it up 2 feet, right, it can really mess up how you view that level 1 floor plan, right? So another thing, when I'm viewing this level 1 floor plan by clicking on it and looking at my level 1 floor plan, okay, I'm going to close out of that. I'm actually looking at this level, okay? All right, so let's change the name of this. I'm going to click on level 1 and I'll call it main level. Enter. There's an enter for you, Corey. When I hit enter, it says, hey, would you like to rename all the corresponding views? And I'm going to say yes. And the reason I'm going to say yes is because I want this level marker here to have the same name as my main level over here. And it said corresponding views because not only do I have a main level floor plan, I also have a main level ceiling plan that corresponds to that level, right? So this main level floor plan looks down at the floor plan and the ceiling looks up. Okay, so any view associated with this level then is renamed. And I can do that as many times as I want, right? I could change level 2 now because I have changed main level. Let's maybe call it level 1. So I click on it, level 1, enter. Would you like to rename corresponding views? Yes. Okay. All right. Another graphic thing that I'm starting to notice here, right? So if I click on my datum again, and I'm just gonna, for a second, talk about selection here in Revit, right? We have this window, select, escape. We have this window, which would only select this if I grab the thing in its entirety. I have the pick, click, okay. You're gonna have to start being selective about how you pick things, I guess is maybe my point. And this one is not super critical, but there's kind of a difference in what operation happens when I, for example, click on this line, click. I select the level and I can see I get some temporary dimensions happening or alignments happening, right? I get a lock, I get this 3D little thing here, okay? I'm gonna hit escape, which is different from maybe selecting it over here. And I say that because very easily can you accidentally click and select the text, right? Very easily can you double click on this little data marker. Let me double click on it, click, click, and I can go to the view, right? There's another thing that can happen, right? And you think, oh, I'll never double click on that, but it happens. So for me, safety says, click on the line if you want to select a level. If you want to change a name, click over here, and if you need to go to the level, click over here, right? Or you can come over to the project browser and double click as well. But if I get into the habit of clicking over here, number one, see, I'm not able to select it as easy. I probably can if I get over here. But I might go to the level on accident, or I might change the name, or mistakenly I might change the height of that level, and then problems are caused in the model, right? So, when you're selecting annotation, things like this, I tend to select a line, right? You'll see me do that a lot, okay? I'm going to zoom in here a little bit more. Something else you're probably noticing on this level when I select it is you see this little kind of little cut mark right there. When I hover, it says add an elbow, okay? If I click right on that, and this is one of those things where if I'm zoomed really far out, I may end up changing the name or the level height. But if I'm zoomed in so I can see it, click, then that bubble or the bubble head, moves down a little. So if you have two level markers very close to one another, or there's something out here that this annotation blocks, you can create an elbow. Click on it again. I can grab this little grip and I can drag it down. Click and hold and drag it down, okay? I can still drag this over if I want, right? I can get the whatever angle I want. And I can grab this little grip here and drag that out. Okay. If I want that elbow to go away, I would grab this little grip right here and drag it back up here to level. Let go. Okay. But things you're going to look for visually, graphically with levels, right? Of course we want the names to be correct. Of course we want the names of the levels and the heights to be correct. That's kind of the number one, right? But visually, right, we also want to make sure that they line up here. We want to make sure that they are not over the top of another architectural element, right? We want to make sure that they line up on this edge, okay? We want to make sure that when you have a piece of architecture formed right here, like a house, that these are not 5 miles down the road, right? We want them to be close, but not too close to the element that they are annotating, okay? All right, so we can create levels, click again, 10 foot, enter, right? Your assignment says 9 feet. Click, 9 foot, enter.
How do you put a whole nother, like, oh, do a basement level?
Ah, there's a good question, right? How do we create another level? It's a good question. Let's do that. We need to create a basement level, okay? So if you go to your architecture tab here, and then we come all the way down to here, we have a level, LL, on the keyboard. And that will allow me to create new levels within my project, okay? If I click on level, it will allow me to draw a level with a line, click, click. I'm gonna undo that, Control Z. Or it will allow me to use a pick, okay? The pick, click. If I want to use that option, that method, I have to specify an offset. So something like 9 foot, enter. So a pick will allow me to hover. It's almost like an offset in AutoCAD, right? I hover over whatever I want to offset or pick, click, and it creates that level 9 feet above the level I'm touching. Now it says 18 feet. Why is it 18 feet? Exactly. It's additive, right? So it's measuring off the main level, and you'll find that, right? You have this main level established. That's always kind of the 0 point, right? So I think it's good practice not to move that main level, to leave it where it's at, and then if you have to create a level very close to it, generate a new one, right? Don't move the main level, right? Even if maybe it's like up 6 inches from ground floor, from like finished grade, I would leave main level at 0 and create a new level called finish or ground level. Okay, so keep this the same. We can create new levels by clicking on level, LL on the keyboard, clicking on the line, click, and I can click, click. Okay. Now when I use the line method, I am not. It's a little bit more difficult to get it exactly where I want it, right? So if I'm here, I can kind of get that temporary dimension, but what if I want it from there? Okay, well, you see how it's a little bit more difficult to get it exactly where I want it if it's off the main level? I can add in my mind and say, I can add in my mind and say, well, from level 1, it's 9, 18, 27, and I'll add 15, and that makes whatever, right? Or I can add a level, click, and then I can select that level, right, click, and change my dimension.
Like, you do that all again.
What's that?
You do that all again.
Yes, let me hit undo. Okay. Level, click, I hover, click, click again. Now if I want to change the dimension between these two, click, and I can change that, right? Maybe make it 10 foot, enter. Or I could come up here and say, oh, it's 19 feet above that. Click, click, maybe it's 21 feet. Okay, so if I use the line method to create my levels, then I have to either add all these up or know a specific distance from that last level, right? And then alter it, right? Revise it. Again, I'm placing an object, but I'm not getting it in the exact right spot the first time, right? If I want to use the pick, I can click on the offset or change the offset to 10 foot, enter, and I can hover, click, hover, and this is a continual level. Click, click, and I'm adding them up. Okay.
I got on my level below, I have a level on both sides of the data.
Oh, so if you click this, you have one over here as well. Is that right?
Yeah.
So that's just visual. You just click on the,
Oh,
and you uncheck,
okay.
uncheck. Okay. Okay. Hold on, guys. I need to run and get a tissue real quick. Small break. I'll be right back. Okay, maybe we'll take this. Do you have any questions around here? Yeah. Ah, that's a good question. Let me pull. I'll show you all that one. Hold on a second. You okay here?
I hope so. We're trying to do homework.
Are you doing it right now? Okay, so one thing that is happening, I'm sorry, what's your first name? So Anne is asking me, I don't see the level tool. Where is it, right? So I'm just going to come over here, and she's saying, well, I'm on architecture, right? And I don't see level. Can anybody think of why it wouldn't be showing up here? I can't make a level in a floor plan because I'm looking at a flat top view, right? I have to go to a view that has a vertical element to create a level. Okay, so I'm going to go to my north elevation again. And now, do you see it pops up there? Right? That's a good question. That happens quite a bit. Did you have a question over here too? Maybe?
Yeah.
Oh, you don't have a T drive? I don't know. What is this PC?
I do. Right there. Oh, okay.
Well, no, not that one. Forget. It's that one with the name on it. Yep. Yep, we're good. Okay.
I do have a question.
Yep.
So I create this thing, but they're like,
Oh, you have one over the top of this. Okay, let's talk about that. So don't. I'll talk about that.
Yeah, we're doing that over the top of each other.
I don't. Oh, you have them right next to each other. Yeah. So you have the same question as Leela. So let's talk about that. Okay. So what happens if you create a level one on top of the other or right next to each other? How do you fix that? Right? What's that? You did it again? The panic sets in. It's really easy to do, right? It's just really easy to do. So I come in here, I click on level, right? And I forget to click on offset, and I click on pick, and oh, well, it's not, I was thinking that might have been the error. But, you know, it's very easy just to grab your line and click, click, and it creates a new level, right? So what you can do is you can grab it and you can hit delete and then hit OK. So it goes away, number one, right? We have plenty of levels in Revit. You can always delete and create a new one, and it's fine, okay? But let's say we don't want to delete it. We want to move it. Grab it. I click on move, and I click on a base point, move in the direction I want to go, and I click again, or I can type, oh, what just happened there? MV, move. Elements will be deleted. Why are my elements? Oh, okay, never mind. So it's because I had some other things in my model. But I can move it up. So these can be moved. They can be copied. Okay. So I could actually grab this, and I could click on copy. Click, click, and there's a copy. Okay. And it's smart enough to know that it doesn't, you know, give it the name copy of level 7. It creates level 8. So I can move them. I can copy them, I can delete them, okay? One thing I want you all to notice is that as I create these levels, do you see that they're all generated over here, right? So again, one thing you really have to remember in Revit that in AutoCAD it's not as critical. You are creating actual floor plans as you generate these levels, right? So I could create floor plans on all of these, or floor plans that go from level 1 all the way up to level 6 if I wanted. Okay. Okay. So generating levels is pretty easy. We know we can move them, right? We've created a bunch. How do we create levels below level 1? Okay. And then there's something else about levels I'm going to talk about, and that is how do I use a level as a data marker and not necessarily a floor plan, right? Because there are going to be times in life when, you know, I'm creating levels and I'm thinking, oh, I want to define the stairway to go from level 1 to level 2, and the landing's going to be between them. But I don't need a floor plan between level 1 and level 2. I just need kind of a datum for that stair to be generated, okay? Something that may not make a whole lot of sense just yet, but I'm going to talk about it with levels so that when we get to that point, you'll know what that means, okay? I'm going to hit undo. Let me show you something else about undo. Do you see how there's a little drop down next to undo? Click. And I've got all these undos. I can grab a bunch of them, right? And it will undo them all at the same time. It's kind of nice, right? Yeah. Okay, so I'm back to level 1 and back to level 2, right? I only have 2 floor plans here. Okay, so what if I want to create a new level that is below level 1? I'm going to click on level, making sure I'm in a view that has a vertical element associated with it. Click. I can come down here, click, click, escape, and it creates a level in the negative direction. So that level 1 is going to be 0. Anything above it is positive. Anything below it is negative. And those levels can be copied, they can be moved, they can be generated using the pick or the line, and you know, they're fairly editable, right? So I click on it. Maybe I want this to be 10, you know, 10 feet down. Okay, so I get that. And then level 3, I get a negative 10 feet. Okay, and I can of course rename it. I zoom in there a little, click, click again, basement level, enter. Would you like to rename the corresponding view? Yes. Okay. Okay, so do levels make sense so far? Not bad. Okay. So what happens if I want to create a level, but I don't want a floor plan associated with it, right? It's maybe more for just measuring other things off of. You know, that might not, again, make a whole lot of sense right now, but in the future, when we start creating other elements in our floor plans, it will, right? There might be a time where you want a stair to go from level 1 to level 2 with a landing in between, but I don't need a floor plan called stair landing, right? That doesn't make any sense. And it just kind of clutters up my project browser over here. So I need the ability to be able to make a level that I can measure off of, but doesn't have a floor plan associated with it. Okay. So I'm going to go back up to my architecture tab, go all the way down here to level, click. And I want you to notice, and this is something that I quite frequently forget, but if I uncheck that make plan view, this level now does not have a plan associated with it when I make it. So if I click, click, hit escape, you'll notice that I have a level 4 here, but over my project browser, there is not a level 4. All right. You'll also notice that visually the marker looks different, right? It's a black marker instead of a blue marker. So that lets me know that it is a level that is for measuring things off of and it doesn't have a floor plan associated with it. Okay. Again, not something you'll have to really worry about just yet, but in the not too distant future, you will. Okay. Okay, let's talk about how these levels also are deleted. And I'm gonna have to remember now because they just changed this. I'm gonna say normally because I know they changed it and I can't quite remember how they changed it. If I grab this level and I hit delete, level 2, delete, okay, there we go, okay. It does delete level 2 over here, okay? So there is a translation between my project browser and between the screen that I'm drawing on. I'm gonna hit undo here. Now, if I come over here to level 2 and I right click and I hit delete, you notice it didn't necessarily delete my level 2 here, right? So I just want to kind of make you aware that that happens, right? Hold on a second. One thing that I think this is maybe in an effort to maybe clean up your project browser so that you can get rid of floor plans that maybe you like shown or need to kind of reference but don't ever have to do work on in the project browser, right? It used to be that if you have, you know, either direction, if I deleted it here, it deleted it there. If I deleted it here, I deleted it there, right? And that was great. And another kind of side note on that, it used to be that if I created a level with a floor plan, that I couldn't go back and unmake that, right? And make it so it didn't have a floor plan associated with it. So if I by accident created level floor with a floor plan associated, and then I thought to myself, you know, 2 hours down the road, I thought, why did I do that? I don't need a stairwell floor plan, right? There was no way that I could go back and undo that unless I wreaked havoc on everything, right? Deleting a level that had things associated with it that I didn't even know were associated with it. So I think this is in an effort to allow you to kind of do this in reverse, right? You create a floor plan, and then you think, oh, I don't need that floor plan, but if I, it's just going to clutter up my project browser for 2 years now, right? This is in an effort, I believe, to allow you to clean things up without deleting, levels that aren't there for measurement, essentially. So you might see that, kind of happening. And in earlier versions of Revit, like I said, if you get an earlier version of Revit, that wasn't the case. If you deleted it in the project browser, it was gone on the screen. And if you deleted it on the screen, it was gone in the project browser. Okay. All right. Levels. Let me just show you how these levels are going to be helpful. Okay, and we're not going to get into walls too much today, but I just want to illustrate what we're going to do with these next time we meet. Okay, I'm going to draw some walls, and I'm going to come over here to level 1. Just like annotation and a level marker's annotation, sometimes building elements can only be, well, and I'm just going to say this for now. We might change our mind in a little bit. But in general, building elements are best drawn in certain views, right? I can still draw a view in elevation. I can still draw a wall in elevation. I can still draw a wall in section, but probably the best view to draw a wall is in a floor plan, okay? It's easy to see, etc. You'll kind of get the picture when you start drawing them. So I'm going to draw a wall, and I want to go back to my level 1. Click, click. Level 1 we know from looking at our levels is at 0. All right. Now I'm going to come up here, and I've had a bunch of screens open and closed, so I'm going to kill all the screens behind the one I'm working in. Click, because I want to show you something in a second. I'm going to draw a wall, and you've all drawn some simple walls, so I'm going to click on wall. And now that you know that we have these other things in Revit called levels, I want to kind of make you aware of how they're going to interact with the wall, all right? Levels help define walls, where they start and where they stop, where the base is and where the top of the wall is, okay? So when I click on the wall icon and I initiate the command, I get a whole bunch of settings happening, right? Number 1, all of the drawing commands pop up. And then on my modify toolbar here, I have join status, I have radius, I have offset, I have chain, I have wall center line, how tall is it, the height, unconnected. I mean, there's just a bunch of stuff we have to define, right? One other thing you'll want to notice on your properties dialog box here now is that I have a base constraint, which is defined as level 1 right now. That's a default value. And then I have a top constraint, and right now that's unconnected. So if I draw this wall right now, click, click, escape, okay, and let me just pull up an elevation view, north elevation, and I'm going to tile my floor plan and my elevation next to each other so I can look at it at the same time. WT, WT, look at that magic, right? Oh, I need some more real estate over here. It's blocking my view. But here's my floor plan. If I click on my floor plan, you see there's my wall, and there indeed is my wall. All right. Now, if you look at this, you can see that that wall, I'm going to change my view, my visual style to shaded, SD, or I can come down to this little icon, visual style, and change it to shaded so I can see this a little better. Do you see how there's a ton of settings in Revit, right? So I'm looking at a floor plan, I'm looking at the elevation at the same time, I'm changing the visual style of the elevation so that it makes sense for me visually in my mind, right? But I'm looking at them both at the same time. But what we're really kind of looking at here is that this wall that we drew in floor plan view, do you see how it starts at level 1, right? And its base constraint is level 1. Okay, it says the height is the top constraint, which is the top of the wall is unconnected. And unconnected here means 20 feet. It just gives like a sample default, how tall is this thing, right? It has to be something. So if I click on this wall, it is indeed 20 feet. What levels will allow me to do is control where that object is defined. So if I click on the object and select it, and then I come over here to top constraint. I can change that. Oh shoot, my Revit is just not working. If I use the drop down, I gotta get this fixed today. It should have all of these levels listed on that drop down. Yep.
I don't have that side.
You don't have what?
That.
Right click.
Oh, your tool palette is not. You're over here. Oh yeah, okay. So I'm gonna remind everybody that. Hold on 1 second. So if your properties dialog box goes away, right, and you can find it going to the view. Okay, go to view, and this route you can find anything, right? So if anything turns off, they're all located here. So I can click on yours is the properties. So right here, you click that and turn it on. Did you find that under view? Okay. So if I click on this wall, then I can use the top constraint drop down. Mine isn't working, but yours should work, and it will list all the levels. Okay. So the levels, it will say level 4, level 2, basement level. And if I define this as going from level 1 to level 2, let me go a different route because I can't get my drop down to work. Okay, so level 1 to level, Jameson, I don't know what's going on with my menus. Here's something else I should tell you. I don't know if this has to do with I don't have a T drive or whatever, but I can't use any of my drop downs.
Are you using Revit?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because you don't have a T drive.
Okay, yeah. So we should probably get it fixed.
You should probably get it fixed.
Normally, you know. Okay. Yeah, so what will happen is, and probably before next class time now that because we're getting into the, yeah. Okay, thanks, Jameson. So now, you know, this would say top constraint. I could define it as level 2, and now when I draw a wall, it would define that wall from level 1 to level 2. Okay. Just a preview, right? Okay, so I'm going to come back over here to my elevation, and I'm going to maximize the screen so it's the only thing on my viewing, screen here. You'll notice my levels are over here. They don't really engage this wall, right? Well, easy enough to fix. I can click. I can grab that little bubble at the end, drag it over. I'm dragging it over. I'm holding my mouse button down, and at the same time, I'm holding my mouse button down. I'm holding the middle roller down, and I'm panning. Do you see I'm panning? And I'm moving this, and I let go. So I can click and hold my mouse, move my pan at the same time, right? You see that? And drag this down so that it engages all of the wall. Okay. No, you just have to do the first one. Because they're all locked, the endpoints are all locked together, you should only have to move one, and they all move. If this is unlocked, then you can only move one, you can only move one at a time. Okay. So I can grab this, right? I can zoom in there, grab that little bubble at the end, the grip, and drag it over, pan over, right? So now my drawing is looking a little bit better, right? So my elevation markers aren't too far out from my building. These might be a little bit too far, so I can click on one, drag it in, escape, but that generally looks pretty good. Okay.
Only one of mine moved.
It's probably because they're unlocked. You have an unlocked option. You just have to lock it back. And it might not be on the one that's unlocked. You could click the next one and you'd have to lock it. Not critical. If you were at home and you didn't know, you could just continue to move them all manually one at a time to get them to line up. All right, so we know about levels. All right, levels control heights in Revit. And specifically, what's going to be most helpful is that levels will help you to define your wall system and where objects live in Revit. Okay, when I place toilets, when I place doors, when I place windows, they will all be relative to a level now from now on, right? So if I place a window and it's on level number 1, I can place it on level number 1 and it can be 30 inches off of level 1. So it has a sill height associated with it, right? But now things are really going to be relative to a level. So if I want a door on level 1, I'm going to open up the floor plan for level 1 and I'm going to place my doors. let me just show you again quickly how that works. You don't know how to do this, but I just want to show you how it works, right? I place some doors. I'm going to look at my north elevation again, click, click. And I place those doors and they have a level associated with them, okay? If I go to level 4, and I can access level 4 by coming over, oh, nope, it doesn't have a level, right? Remember that? It doesn't have a plan associated with it. If I go to level, well, my wall, I can't make, yes I can. I can't make my wall go any taller. There we go. I cheated a little, I used my grip. We'll get to that. I go to level 2, okay, and click, click. I must have not renamed. Where's my level 2? I deleted it, didn't I? I deleted it. I've done all sorts of tricky things today, haven't I? Okay, we'll go to my basement level then. Basement level, there we go. If I want a door associated with my basement level, right, I would come in, click on door, and click, click, click. Do some windows? You're crazy. Window, window, look how easy that is. No trimming, no extending, no making a hole in the wall. Look at that, right? But those are also associated with the basement level. So now objects are going to be associated with a level. Again, generally speaking, the easiest way to create objects based on a level is to go to that level and then create the object. So if I want to create doors, I go to the level they're supposed to be built on and I add the doors, okay? It can be changed. I can't change it because my stuff isn't working. But I could, if I want this door to change and be on level 1, I could select it, come over to my drop down and change the level and it would pop up to the next level, okay? But again, I think I've said it about 5 times, but the main thing I want to get across is that items are now associated with levels, whether it's the height of a wall, whether it's placing a door or a window or a toilet or a shower or millwork or anything like that. These objects that we are building now, these building objects, have level associations with them, okay? All right, any questions on levels? All right, so this is going to be kind of, in terms of setting up your file or getting ready to work in Revit, the first thing you'll want to do is open the correct file that you want to start with. So likely the architectural template, right? You'll save that file somewhere consistently on your computer, right? So make a folder called Revit Homework and always save your files in the Revit Homework file folder, okay? Once you have that saved, you're going to establish your levels, and that's something you'll do on this homework. So you'll change to an elevation view and you'll add your levels, right? Remembering hopefully in the back of your head that you can't create levels in a flat floor plan view, right? So if you pan up, I guarantee I'll get an email. Somebody will forget, right? But if you are trying to create levels in a floor plan, it just won't happen. So you have to go to a view with a vertical, with a vertical nature associated, sections, elevations, details that are sectional, and create your levels, okay? Once you create your levels, and I say that, I say create your levels, but you know, when I say that, you may not get it in the right spot the first time. You might draw a level and you want it 9 feet off of level 1 and it's 12, right? That's perfectly fine. I can always come back in, select it, change that to 9, enter, okay? Now, one thing I also want you to well, actually, never mind, we're not going to get to that yet. It'll cause another level of complication, but we'll get to, I was going to say there are going to be times when you maybe want to lock these levels so they don't move, right? So you always have 9 feet between these two, or you always have 12 feet between these two, right? We'll talk about locking those so they stay in place. But for now, you know, you're going to open your file, save it. You're going to flip to an elevation view, generate some levels, right? And then next time we meet, we'll talk about walls and defining walls, okay? Now, within that workflow, one more thing for today, and that will be, what if, you know, you're working somewhere and you've set up your Revit file, but somebody else has been working in AutoCAD, right? And they have an AutoCAD file, or a client comes to you and, you know, hopefully they have an AutoCAD file to start a project with, right? So you don't have to take your tape measure out and measure things on site, which never happens, or it's not accurate, right? You're like, this was from 1974. What's happened since then? But But every now and again, you'll get a client with a CAD file and they say, I have this space, I want you to redesign it. I have a CAD file from an architect. Great. Or they have some blueprints or something to that effect, right? We need some way to be able to bring that AutoCAD file into Revit so that we could trace over it to generate our model, right? So I want to talk about how we're going to link in AutoCAD files so that we can use them to generate Revit files, right? It's a very typical workflow. Even if you're working for someone, there could be someone who loves AutoCAD. They don't want to change to Revit, right? So they draw everything in AutoCAD and they give you the file and then they say, put it in Revit. Okay, great, I can do that. Let's talk about how we can do that, all right? I'm gonna go to a floor plan view, level 1, click, click. And I want to insert an AutoCAD file here so I can view it and use it to generate a model. And then when I'm done, I just want to delete it, okay? All right, the first thing I have to have though is I have to have an AutoCAD file to bring into Revit, all right? So for us and for your assignment, you're gonna go to Canvas, right? You're gonna go to the Residence Information Assignment, click. And I'm just going to warn you guys, this is not a very exciting project, but this is what we're going to be using. We're going to use this AutoCAD file to generate our first residential project in Revit. So I'm going to download this file, okay. Oh gosh, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to click on Drawing, and it's going to download. Okay. I'm going to click on that and it's going to open up in AutoCAD. This is why I don't like carrying my phone. I can't get into Canvas if I don't sometimes. Okay. Turn this down. There we go. All right, so this is the floor plan that we're going to be working with. All right, it's just a tiny little floor plan. I stole it from Jeff Plant. So, you know, it's got a living room, a dining room, a back porch, front covered porch. We've got a stair in the middle. We've got plumbing fixtures, bathroom, sink. You know, it's a tiny little floor plan, but it has all of the things that we will need to, you know, to create a comprehensive floor plan. All right, so I'm going to File and I'm going to save this. And if you don't know how to use AutoCAD, you don't have to open this. You just have to save this file somewhere, right? So if I opened it, I could choose Save As. I could go to wherever my homework is saved, Revit Project, and call this Floor Plan 1 and hit Save. Okay. If I don't know how to use AutoCAD and I don't even want to mess around with opening it, I would click on this and download it. And then I would use this arrow and hit Show in Folder. Okay. And you can click on it, right click, copy, go to your desktop, and you could open up Revit Project, right click and paste. Okay. I didn't?
Yeah, mine didn't either.
It's got to be a setting in maybe on your computer.
AutoCAD's not, you have to open AutoCAD first before you can open the plan, so your computer knows it.
Which one to open? Usually it will ask you though, right? It will say, what would you like to open this with?
Yeah.
Hmm.
You find AutoCAD on there.
You what?
I couldn't find AutoCAD on there, like I searched the paragraph.
So it's not installed on some of your computers?
I have it on mine, I just opened it on mine.
Yeah, like, it's,
You might have
taken
a class before and have it on your computer.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe you guys won't be opening it then, right? That's all right. It's not an AutoCAD class. Well, so we'll try and get that figured out. She's been in AutoCAD before though. All right. So we get our floor plan, and what we're going to do, there's a couple of different ways we can bring our AutoCAD file into Revit. All right. If I go to Insert, my Insert tab here, click, I can link a CAD file, and I can also import a CAD file. Linking establishes a path to and from Revit in your CAD file. So if the benefit of using a link is that if I change the CAD file, it updates in Revit, right? So, you know, you're working with your project manager and they say, you know, why don't you link it in because I'm still making changes. So those changes, you know, you'll be able to see them in Revit. Great. If you want to bring in a standalone copy, no link to the original file because you don't care if there's changes or there's not going to be, right? Then you will import it, okay? So I'm just going to import it because there won't be any changes for us. It's just going to be what it is.
The homework says no.
Well, we're going to import. I changed my mind. That's one of those things where I think the terminology, you know, you just use one term for everything and there are actually two different meanings for that term. So I'll change that. It's like AutoCAD, right? Do you turn your layers on and off, or do you freeze and thaw them? Right? Okay, so we're going to import our CAD file. I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to browse to wherever that CAD file is at. So I'm going to go to my desktop, Revit project, and there's my file. Now, I'm not just going to double click on it and bring it in. I need to look at a few settings before I do. And this is pretty key, right? You're going to notice that this is very important, because especially if you're working on a project that has a lot of floor plans, right? You will just get teased for the rest of your life in your office if you link or import in a CAD file and you forget to click current view only, because it will import in all 5 million different views of your Revit if you don't check that box, right? And if you want that to happen, that's great. But if you don't, you're going to click current view only. So that import will only be visible from level 1. All right. Some of these other settings like colors, preserve the colors. Do you want it to be colored or do you want it to be black and white? Right, you can choose. I'll choose preserve so that it looks different from my Revit file. Layers and levels, do you want every layer to show or do you just want the visible ones? You know, it's up to you. I usually will choose visible because before I bring a CAD file into Revit, I open it up and I, you know, kind of vet it so that it has only what I need showing, right? So visible, import units, we're just going to use auto detect. Correct, we're going to keep that checked. Auto origin to origin, we're going to leave that alone. Current view only, okay? Now, if this is unchecked, it is going to go in every level you have established, right? I can change that, like if I don't want it on level 1, I can change it to the basement or whatever, right? But I only want it to be in my current view. I'm going to hit open. And there it is. It's tiny. Look at it. Just a little guy. Right? But there is my AutoCAD. Okay. If I click on it, it acts as one object, right? It's almost like what we call a symbol. It's one object in Revit. Okay. Now, one thing I do want to quickly, before I get into this, because I'm seeing that very dark border. There is a setting, and this is the keyboard shortcut is TL, thin lines. And up here in my quick access, there it is. It'll be in all of yours. I want you to notice my line weights here. Do you see I have a very thick line for my wall, I have a medium for my panel of my door, and I have a thin line for the swing, as it should be. And that's represented thick, thin, medium, or thick, medium, and thin. If I click on thin lines right here, click, you see that goes away. Click, click. It's nice sometimes to have thin lines on so you can see what's going on, but it's also nice to be able to turn it off so that I can more easily see objects in my model. Well, I guess that's still giving me a thickness. I thought it would go away. Anyway, but this object is one piece. If I click on it, you'll notice there's a little thumbtack. That means it's pinned. We won't get in, I guess pinning is kind of an easy subject. It's essentially like locking a layer. So if you pin something, it pins it in place and doesn't move, right? It locks its place. If I select an object, the pin options pop up. Let me hit escape. You're thinking, it's pinned. How do I get rid of pinning, right? You have to select the object if you want to pin or unpin it. But I can click on the unpin, or I can click on pin, and it pins there. It's kind of nice to have it pinned so that it doesn't move when you're tracing over the top of it, right? But that really is all that there is to bringing in an AutoCAD object. Now, what's nice about this is that it's almost acting as an XREF, right? Even though I've imported it and it's standalone, all of its objects have not necessarily been brought into Revit, meaning all of its line weights and its layers and all the garbage associated with it. Right now, when it's acting as a link, it is all packaged in one piece. So if I deleted it, nothing of it would kind of remain in my Revit file, right? If I explode it, all that garbage will stay, right? Causing havoc, wreaking havoc. But right now it's just kind of one object. It's acting as a whole. I can view it. I can't change it, right? But that's good because it doesn't, have all of its other stuff living in my Revit file to clutter it up, okay? It is the correct units. I can reference it. I can dimension it. I can draw over the top of it. I can snap to it, okay? There are a lot of different things I can do with it. And my main goal here will be to use it to trace over the top of. So I come in here to architecture, and this is on level 1, right? I've established that this object is on level 1. I could come to wall, and I would set all my settings, which we won't talk about today, and I would just come in here, click. Oh, it's from my center line, escape. I'm gonna change, I can't change it, never mind. So I'm just gonna draw. But I'd come in here and I would start panning and clicking and tracing away, right? It's pretty, I'm not getting it exact because I can't draw from where I want it to be, but I could always align it when I'm finished. Getting it generally where I want it to be. Escape, escape. And there's the outline of my floor plan, right? I have it in floor plan view. If I double click on elevation, like north, there, oh, let's get rid of this guy. Okay, there it is. I can go to east, there it is. South, there it is. West, there it is. I can go to my 3D view. I go up here, there's my 3D. Click. Oh, look how cute it is, right? I don't see my levels in 3D. I don't see, my CAD file, which is the way it should be in 3D, right? I can hold down Shift, and my middle roller, remember that's orbit. Shift, middle button, hold those two down and move my mouse to orbit around. There it is.
What level would it be in?
Well, so if you have linked it in at level 1, you'll want to be on level 1 to draw.
Okay, I already drew it.
Okay, and what do you want to do now?
I want to put it in 3D.
You're going to come up to here. You see that? Click, and you're in 3D. Hold down your Shift, middle roller down, move your mouse. Isn't that nice? I gauge things by the mom coolness factor. Like if your mom walked by, she'd be like, look at that, isn't that cool? So I could come down here, I could change my visual style to shaded. It looks shaded, right? This helps me a lot. I like to be able to change my visual styles because it helps me be able to tell what things are what, right? Things have different colors. So, all right, the gray things are walls and I can see those and visually they make sense, right? I can change the scale, 1/8 inch. Let's change it to 1/4 inch. Doesn't do a whole lot in 3D, but I can. There's a crop region in 3D just in case you ever have that issue. You might, it's kind of hard to find, there it is, which is great. I'm gonna turn that off. One super, super helpful feature in 3D that I use all the time is called a section box. So if I'm in 3D, and this is the only place I can access it, if I come over here to my properties, you'll notice that I have this section box check mark here. Okay, click, and I get a box around it, and if I click on that box, these grips pop up, and I can click on the grip, and I'm clicking and holding and moving my mouse. Move it down, it cuts it. Okay, now let me see if, oh shoot. What's helpful about this is that, say for example, I need to look inside a floor plan, right? This is kind of one of those SketchUp kind of features where it's essentially like an interactive section, right? So I can start looking at the floor plan and saying, oh, that wall's not right, or this wall's not right, I need to move that. So I go back to floor plan and I change it, and then I look at it again, and I go back into my other floor plan, and you're going back and forth between views a lot, all right? Okay, so if I want to see my AutoCAD file again, I go to level 1, click, click, and there's my AutoCAD file. Okay, there's my walls. I can delete them or move them or align them or do whatever I need to do. I can start drawing interior walls. Wall. Right, I have some interior walls I need to draw. Click, click. So it's pretty easy to start drawing at this point, which we'll get into walls next time. But at this point, you save your file, you put your AutoCAD, you link your AutoCAD or import your AutoCAD in, and you're ready to go. Your assignment says to limit your backup files to 3, right? So do you remember how to do that?
Go into options
You can do, yes, you can change it in your options. You can also kind of, maybe the easier way to do it when you're first starting is just in your save as, right? So you can go to File, Save As, we'll do a project, and if I click options right here, you know, while you're in there, it's easy just to say, oh, I only want 3 backup files, okay? Pretty important, otherwise, sometimes, at least it used to be, maybe they've changed it, it used to be 10, right? So you'd have 10 files generating at the same time you're working in one file, which, you know, is confusing. And have I told you guys in this class, I've done it before where I accidentally opened up a backup file and it immediately erased, you know, like several days work, and I was not very happy about it. So you don't want too many because you can easily confuse them with a working file when you're not paying attention. You don't want too few in case you know, lose one, or you want to go back a certain, you know, distance. You want one to be fairly close, one in the middle, and one kind of far behind. So 3 is probably a pretty good number. My crop region, I can grab my crop region, I can drag it in, right? So that this is not so kind of out there, not hugely important, but things we need to kind of think about, right? But this is generally going to get us going, okay? Any questions on levels? All right. I think next time is kind of going to be a really defining class as far as Revit goes. So we'll talk about walls, we'll talk about defining walls, base constraints, top constraints, and construction of walls, right? So, and I say it's kind of defining because everything else in Revit functions the exact same way. So once you learn it in accordance with walls, it applies to floors and roofs and ceilings and stair types and everything else, okay? Okay. That's it for today.
Sorry, when is this assignment due?
It is due, let's look in Canvas. Okay, yeah, my general response to that is I don't know because I forget which class is which. Oh, here's a good thing though. It's due the 17th. I leave it open until, this one hasn't been left open, but usually what you'll see happening, let me edit this one, is I leave the assignment open for another week so that if you have to turn it in late, you can. You have that extra, you have that week. It's going to be late, but once the assignment hits its until date, it disappears off Canvas. So I'll save that.
Alright, and then it's probably better to wait until the next class until we start the assignment.
Well, you could get your file going. You could start it and save it and link in the CAD file, and either way, whatever you want to do.
So we don't submit anything for what we just did.
Today in class? Well, not yet, because you haven't drawn any walls yet. Yeah, so just hold off. We're gonna, well, if you've drawn some, well, you can submit it if you'd like.
So we have to do the other gray part that's down there.
Yes, we are going to do that. So what you'll want to, you probably will, you could get this going, but then the assignment won't be finished until next time when we get all the definition for the walls. Yeah.
I'm having issues saving mine.
You are? Hold on, let me just stop this.